Legacy, week 7 is done. That is our first half. I'll be referring to it as back 9 or back 7 for most of this video. It does mean that there's a lot on the go. I mean, we just had the England game stop. We'll take a week-long break and then international kick up again. We're looking at a very, very pivotal week coming up, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, let's talk about week 7. Then we'll move forward. I will admit this week was a little bit tricky for me to be focused as I'm wrapping up the week 7 games and thinking we're now on kind of the back 9 or back 7, I guess. And this is officially midseason for fantasy football. I was also not surprisingly trying to watch game 7 as the Monday Nighters were going on. So while I was pretty pumped up about baseball, it did get me thinking a little bit how much baseball sometimes gets crapped on. Now, I'm not going to go on a huge tangent because I understand if you're here, you probably at least like football. You might also like baseball. But I think sometimes the leagues with like a lot of games, especially baseball, but you can throw basketball in too, get crapped on for being run not so well because the regular season can get a little bit dry. Especially baseball over the summer. We take it for granted because there's so many games. And yet the NFL gets all this credit for how the league is run. And I gotta say, this week it was really highlighted. I don't think the NFL has run well at all. And I know that's not shocking. Some people have a very similar opinion. But it's like if other sports are selling lemonade, legitimately the NFL is selling cocaine. They don't need to sell it. It is just a product that is super easy to gamble on. We've talked about this before. I know I'm not the first and only one to say it, but there's a lot of people in these leagues that couldn't really walk me through basic defensive sets in football, but know what a good fantasy line is and want to beat their friends in something. So I think just because it is a fun product doesn't mean it's being sold a whole lot better. And the reason I went on this tangent is I'm one of the few idiots that over here on this side of the world, I actually got up to follow some of the early games. So when I say early, I'm talking about the 1 o'clock East Coast. And they all sucked. But if you looked at the schedule, it wasn't a shock that they sucked. I mean, we could go back to my comment last week saying just because it's close doesn't make it good. And Jets Carolina was like the embodiment of this. I mean, if you score twice, well, for the Giants 3 times, they don't make their kicks, but 14, 15 points is going to win a game. That doesn't make it awesome. Like, name one play in that game. Try and think of one. Not going to happen. And it's not like a shot. Cleveland, Miami, I mean, it was played in a hurricane. I knew it was going to be garbage, and I'm a Browns fan. In fact, I'm actually mad that they won because it's mid-season. I'm already pissed that it cost us a pick. The 4 o'clocks, though, the late games, those were much, much better. And weirdly enough, the Dallas-Washington game, which is probably the game I was the most excited about, was the worst one. But at least we had some close calls, some comebacks, etc. So it wasn't like necessarily there was no bad games. In fact, a lot of the games were entertaining. Just maybe spread them out a little bit and actually get to enjoy some of the good games instead of trying to put them all at nights. I mean, people back in North America, we're lucky out here. I get one subscription to DAZN or DAZN or whatever you want to call it, and I get all the games. From what I understand, if you're in North America, it's 6 subscriptions or something you need to get all of these games. And there's no guarantee that they're going to be any good. Even if, take the Thursday nighter, if you're thinking that was an awesome game, you probably didn't necessarily watch it. It was entertaining, but it wasn't great football. I mean, Mike Tomlin is supposed to be this great football mind, and I really honestly think that he was, but on the other side, we have a failed Browns quarterback in Flacco who doesn't know the playbook. And actually, that's not an insult. He said it afterwards. He can't understand Zach Taylor's voice in his head, so he doesn't know what plays are supposed to be called. So he's just like Vince Vaughn and Wedding Crash, just yelling hot route and essentially throwing it to the best receiver in the game. 23 targets and 16 receptions. He's not even trying to pretend that he was trying to run an offense. He just threw in some audibles, pointed to someone, and gave it to the best guy on the field. And Pittsburgh is supposed to be this phenomenal defensive front, not this year, but in general, in theory, they're supposed to be this great defense, and they couldn't figure that one out. I'm starting to wonder if maybe Rodgers was lying and maybe he made the whole team get all vaccinated. And maybe they're now on the spectrum, because I've seen more adaptability from NPC characters from old video games. You got to know, you got to make some kind of a read. They were not even trying to pretend they weren't just forcing him the ball. You got to stop something. Anywho, I'm not really sure if it was my comparison to baseball or the fact that, you know, again, I'm not going to make it all about the Jays. And you know I want to make it all about the Jays, but let me have this because I'm not so sure the World Series is going to go super well. Football was super entertaining this week. I still dug it. I still liked it, but I don't know if it was actually what I'd consider good football, save for a couple games. We'll see if Week 8 has any kind of way of changing this. but I would say maybe not. We are walking into Buyapalooza. This is the only week, I believe, that has 6 teams on a bye. But you know what? We'll get to that when we get to the post-game stuff. First, let's maybe talk about week 7 a little bit and see how that affected our leagues. It was a crazy week, and technically I do have the most points scored, but not by much. 3 teams north of 180. Yowza. So the big news though, Jeff finally takes his first loss in week 7. That's a long stretch. We haven't had a 6-0 in quite a while, I don't think, although I can go and take a second look. So congrats, Jeff, on the run. You still were over-predicted, but I kind of had you on this one. You did have a bit of an off week. Now, you did have a monster Thursday night with Jamar Chase. Just full disclosure, I wasn't super mad about that. I am in a guillotine with 8 people, so by week 7 is the final, and he won it for me. So, woot, woot, can't be mad there. Definitely one of those weeks where I was both cheering for and against. You don't care. You stopped listening already. Jeff, you had the wide receiver 1 and 5 in JSN. So your receivers didn't let you down. You just kind of had a brain fart in your flex area and some of your backup QBs. You didn't have a lot of options. You were kind of dealing with some injury concerns and some stuff on the bench. So Puka Nacua being out obviously has been a huge one for you. So hopefully for your sake, he comes back soon. For me, my receivers did fine. It was more my running back in CMC in his Music Factory. He was the RB1 and Cleveland D1. Everybody else was meh. I mean, good tight end performance. Abuka made it through the game without getting hurt. I was happy with at least one of my 2 quarterbacks. I need another running back, and I don't even think I'm shy about saying it, but I did have some options, maybe fishing through here. I don't know. We'll see how it works and see what I can come up with. I am still technically second, although we're going to get to somebody else right next to me who is more than ready to take that spot as soon as I make it available. That person, of course, I didn't even beat him by a full point this week. Gene the Machine is coming on strong. We're technically tied. I only got him by a couple points. We'll take a look at that later. He came and spiked the ball hard. I think that's what that little football thing is doing for Timmy here. On Timmy's side, he did have a couple wide receiver performances. He also had one that I am not going to make fun of. If you saw the Evans play, that was one of those scary ones. I think he broke something, I think collarbone, and kind of concussed himself, almost knocked himself cold in the same play. He did not look like he knew where he was when they were helping him off the field. He is pretty broken. I think we can say it. The 1,000-yard streak is probably going to be over. Sad. Seems like a good dude and all, and definitely got you no points here. Adams did quite fine. Another bagel on your tight ends, so I would assume some stuff needs to happen here in terms of your decision making. Now your defense, just like the other team's defense, did quite well. You did make one poor decision. Keenan Allen has been pretty consistent all year. Only a few off weeks. He was the wide receiver 4. Just was on your bench, unfortunately. Now, Gene, you definitely made a lot of good calls. You did have Addison. That could have helped you out. But for the most part, I mean, your tight end 4 in Jake the Snake Ferguson. You had the RB4 in one of the few Cleveland Browns to score any points. And then A.J. Brown, kind of a pro-con, I guess you could say. He was the wide receiver 3, past tense on the was, because it looks like he's out and then he has a bye, so hopefully you got some depth. Now, Olave was just outside of the top 5. I believe he was wide receiver 6 on the week. So at least you got that going for you. You know what? With 180 plus, you got a lot going for you. 3rd place in name value only. Timmy, that would have been a big one. The top 6 is where you want to be, but if you got to get it all out in 1 week, let's see how you rebound going into week 8 and the start of our back 9. Now, just to clarify, Timmy is what I've been told to call new Tim. Old Tim or Tim A would be Tim Rose, but Tim A is too close to Tim E, and you're no Tim B. You get it, Tim. North of 180, 3rd team to do it this week, so congrats there. You're also playing someone who may or may not have forgotten that fantasy sports is a thing. Getting to you, Tim, first. You had Stafford as the QB4. You had the RB2 and Gibbs. Monster Monday night for you. Had to have loved that. And then obviously Trey McBride's been a consistent kind of thorn in everybody else's side, but not in yours. He was the tight end 3. Taking a look down, we can just try and see. Obviously, not quite commando, but pretty close to it. Didn't have a very furnished basement. Kent, you're allowed to play defenses when yours is on a bye. Didn't know if you knew that. I know there's been breaks and things, but you also, speaking of brokes, Nico Collin kind of got broken there. Hopefully your running back core is able to come back. I've heard good things, and Swift was the RB5 on the week, so that certainly helped you out. But this was a bit of a fart of a week. You almost scored half. I mean, you scored less than half of the guy you were playing, but almost half, that you were predicted to. Not normal for you. You technically are still in the playoff as of today. My guess is you know that there's football also on this Sunday. If not, maybe someone remind him and you'll bounce back. Tim, you needed this one because you got to have a couple of these in a row to get that spot that you're fighting here from Kent. So this week was a good step forward. Marco, you're following the rules, you're hitting your predicted, you're doing what you're supposed to do, but unfortunately Rennie did a little bit more than he was supposed to do, so he didn't get paid off for it. Now, you did have the quarterback one, but where is he? Yep, sorry, buddy. I started the wrong one here. Bo Nix was the quarterback one. Probably you were thinking about him and Goff, but you know what? Bo Nix has not been producing much this week. That was an anomaly, and it was mostly in the second half, so I'm not going to rain on you too hard there. You also had the wide receiver 2, Devontae Smith, who could bump up to wide receiver 1 because A.J. Brown's next week, so that could be a big one. Don't want to be the person who necessarily plays you. And Genty, just not a great outing against KC. Didn't really find the game script, so not really your week, but like I said, you did hit predicted, which is normally good enough, but for Rennie, not so good enough. Mahomes was the quarterback 5, and in general, and then Herbert was the quarterback 3. He was quarterback heavy, and then what I was going to say is, and then in general, he just had a reasonably good supporting cast here. His running backs did a little bit more than they should. In fact, Warren almost doubled down. Tucker Kraft's been great. You would think that this was the kind of week he was going to be in the top 5, but just outside of. And he also made some good decisions, except maybe he needed to pull some Charbonnet out of the fridge, but him over Kupp would have been the only play and didn't necessarily need it. Maybe he just could have joined the 180 club, but he doesn't need to. He is top 4. He is in the playoffs as of now. Marco, this would have been a big one for you, so you're going to have to rebound in week 8. Every week when I look, what is our most narrow margin of victory? 9 times out of 10, I'm looking at you here, Connor. Did you do something? Is this karma? Did you like kick some puppies over the long weekend or so? I don't understand why you have this cloud over you, but you seem to. And in this case, it actually was a little bit manageable. I mean, you could have put some stuff in. You guys both had a bagel, which I am not against, by the way. If we ever wanted to institute that you started someone who didn't get hurt and got a bagel punishment, you both would have had to do something. So you could have put in a wide receiver on this side. You could have put a tight end on this side. We could have played the woulda, coulda, shoulda game all day. In your particular case, I think it was Jaden Daniels who was having a great game for two quarters and a little bit, and then suddenly wasn't playing anymore. Jonathan Taylor was the RB3. He was kind of your bright spot. And like I said, there might have been some motion you could have gone down here. But speaking of good benches, Jackson Dart was the QB2. But Double J here decided they did not necessarily need it. Plus, they had Jones and Rodgers. I guess if in Rodgers we trust. You did have at least a couple performances that were at or just above, and your only one that rang the top 5 was New England's defense. They were the defense too, and between the Cleveland defense was the only 2 in the top 5 that anyone even played this week. So that was cute. Connor, I don't know what to tell you. I don't want to say it because you're just as likely to now go on a run in the second half, win all of these close margin games because it's not like you're off by much. And hey, for rookies coming in, 2 new people, not to fantasy sports, but obviously to this particular pool, top 5, you're in the playoffs and you're in the hunt. Starting to gap out a little bit. We got a lot of 2 people ties where we're just going to points 4 in this case. So obviously we want to pay attention to that, especially here since we technically have a tie for the last playoff spot and teams that are close enough to fighting distance. So now as we start our, I'm going to call it back 9, but I guess it's back 7. Let's take a look at matchups. Obviously this is just after Thursday. So Jeff's going to have to rebound a little bit, but that's a very pivotal matchup. I think also we got our 4-5 going after each other, and that's looking predicted pretty tightly. As always, we got to pay attention. Now's the time when you want to go on that run. Don't want to wait too much longer, or then you're kind of looking at the outside in. As of now, everyone has a striking distance. Jeff's looking to rebound from being undefeated and taking his first loss. Lots on the go, lots to pay attention. Can't wait till Sunday. Heading into our back 9, it is a monster week, not just for matchup, but for who you're going to start. In a league this deep, Buy-A-Paloozas are going to hit hard. So odds are there's going to be some people starting that you don't necessarily want to, that are a little more touchdown dependent. That usually leads to some fluky scores. So I wouldn't take anyone's seeding for granted. Play the people you want to play. Make some gut calls. See if you can squeak out a week 8 win and start the back 9 right. Good luck, everybody.